Okay, so we're live. Let's give under 3 to 5 minutes for people to join in, and then we're going to get started. So we're going to start on zero um, numbers. So let's just give a few minutes.
Sure.
All right, hi everyone. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you're joining us from. My name is Daniel Umoren. I am the community manager at Direct.io, and I'm going to be your host for today. And we're going to be having an interesting conversation around building a vulnerability management, building a vulnerability management and patch validation. So, please, if you know somebody or anybody who is supposed to be on this live stream or watching this meeting with us, please invite them and let's have them on board. All right, so bring them on, send the link to them, and let them join. So I just going to give you a few more minutes, and then we're going to get started into the event proper. So don't miss out and don't come late. So just wait a few more minutes, and then we get started. So people, please join in. Please send in the link for people who are supposed to be here. Let them join in, and then we get started. Once we hit 10, once it's 12:05 and we reach 10 live subscribers or people watching live, we're going to get started. Hi, Chukudi. Welcome. I'm excited to have you on the call. Please bring in people who are supposed to be here as well. Send them the invite link and tell them to join in. It's going to be an interesting power session. And I don't know about you guys, but I'm eager to learn a thing or two today. So bring people on board, share them the invite link, and let's have them on the event. All right, so I think we can get started. Hi everyone, my name is Daniel Umoren. I am the community manager at Direct.io and Xterns.ai. And this event is proudly brought to you by Direct.io and Xterns, right? But this is majorly an Xterns event. So we're going to be focusing a bit more on Xterns today. Now, you might be wondering what is Xterns and why are we even having an event around what Xterns is, right? So I'm going to do like a brief introduction into what Xterns is all about before I introduce our speaker who is going to be talking to us today. So in case you're wondering, let's have that. So let me go ahead and share my screen. Before I go ahead and share my screen, so let me give you a brief idea of what Xterns is about. So In today's world, a lot of people are going to um, boot camps, technical boot camps, coding schools like Gary.io, like old school. I mean, you name it, right? Now, a lot of people go to these boot camps, right? Particularly those ones with 6 months, and then learn new stuff, but they don't really have experience to show for it. Or by the time they've learned and they're not in the real world, they are still looking for um, job opportunities, trying to get a company to hire them and all of those things. But they've learned, right? They've learned the skills. But most of the time, the learning does not exactly translate to experience. And if you're an engineer, if you're in the engineering space, you most likely relate to it because there's one thing to learn something new, there's one thing to build with it. If you're not building with it, then chances are you don't even have enough experience because you only learn by building, right? So we decided to come up with Xterns or AI, which gives you a platform where you can decide that, hey, I want to learn this stuff, right? Or I've been learning this stuff for about 6 months, but I want to have hands-on engineering experience. That's where Xterns comes in, right? So Xterns comes in the sense that Xterns is a platform that allows you, that onboards you, and allows you to work on real-world projects. That is what Xterns is all about. So now, imagine I, for example, a software engineer. I decided that, oh, I've been learning software engineering for the past 6 months, but I want to work on real-world projects that will give me real-world engineering experience. I can sign up on Xterns. Now, let's look at what the Xterns website looks like. So I'm just going to try to share my screen and talk about Xterns for the next few minutes before we go ahead to get started. Okay, so I want to believe you can see my screen now. So yeah, so I'm just going to go ahead and continue. Right. So now this is the Xterns platform. Right. Now you sign up to become an Xtern. So you click the Xtern button and then you become an Xtern. Or if you already have an account, you log in. If you become an Xtern, you can sign up and apply, or you can join as a tech lead. Now we have tech leads. Now, what are tech leads? Tech leads are people who are already like vast in the tech world and have a lot of experience and they are willing to coach and mentor people. Right. So those are people we call tech leads. So if you, for example, you're coming in to apply as an extern, you fill in the application and take the assessment, and then if you pass the assessment, you get access to the account. Now on my own end, I already have access to the account. I'm just going to try to log in. Now, when you log in, right, or when you have access to Xterns, right, the first thing you want to take a look at is your employability score. Now, you might be wondering, what is an employability score? An employability score is basically a collation of the amount of projects you've worked on, right, and how well you've done them, right? So, let's say somebody's looking to hire you now. You can work on project on Xterms and hit your and make your employability score move from 256 that is currently on right now to about 800. If you have 800, right, you are at a very, very good level and you're fit for employment. Why? Because you've taken on projects, you've worked on them, and you just did not work on them anyhow. You were able to work on them successfully, right, from start to finish, right? That on its own boosts your employability score over time. Now, when you've done that, right, you can now begin to say, oh, Xterns can even begin to say, oh, we're partnering with different companies to get you job opportunities. You can even just show this project you've worked on, you can add them to your resume and say, oh, I worked on this, I worked on this, I worked on this, which gives you an edge over a regular person who has just finished boot camp and is still trying to get the job. Now, when you have logged into the Xterns dashboard, what you need to do is to come to my project if you've not picked up a project before, or you've picked up one project. Now, and the interesting part is all of these projects, you get to see what it actually entails, right? You get to see what it entails, technical skills you need, whether it's beginner friendly, expert, or intermediate, right? Now you can see the progress you've made. So it's something you can constantly build over time. And another thing you might want to take note of is join a pod. So in a situation whereby you've seen our publicity around the particular project that is going to be coming up, and you want to join the particular project, right? You find it interesting to you, just like the topic Kevin is going to be talking about to us today. After this project, after this event, like Kevin is going to have a project that you can actually easily work on. Now, all you need to do is to come to this joining board, and you will see the projects listed there, and then you can decide to join in. And if Kevin finds you fit for it, he accepts you, and then you begin to work on the project. Now, projects can last between 1 month to 3 months to 5 months, depending on how large they are. Now, you can see this one. This is a different project entirely, but it's supposed to span 3 months and it's entirely remote. And you can see the technologies that are needed for the particular project. Right? So, those are the things that excite us about Xterns, and we're saying, hey, come join Xterns today and come and build and work on new projects and new stuff that would be beneficial to you, and then you can now add them to your portfolio and say, "Oh, I've worked on this, I've worked on this, I've worked on this. These are the skills I have," and then you're ready to be employed as you're ready to be employed and then get jobs. So that's that about that on Extends, right? For those who are just joining, right? This is an Extends event by Dare.io, where we are talking about building vulnerability management and patch validation by Kevin. Hi, Kevin. How are you doing today? Hi, Kevin. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can, Daniel. Sorry.
All right. So I'm just going to give the floor over to you now, and you can take it up from here.
All right. Hi, everyone. Good afternoon, guys. How are you doing today? Okay, so let me just start by presenting, sharing my screen, and I would like to know when it's visible. Someone can just, don't know if you can confirm if it's visible. All right, Daniel, can you see it?
Yes, yes, it's visible now.
Is visible? All right, great, great. All right. So, um, okay, but let me ask: Can people can drop questions or comments on the comment tab? So I might be pushing questions to you, asking for input, and if you have any questions or have want to make any comments, you can just drop it in the comments tab. But before we go in, I just want to stress on the presentation Daniel just finished. I mean, some of you might know me, some might not. I might be the first time you are hearing about me. But I'm a cybersecurity engineer. My name is Kevin Ani, and I'm a cybersecurity engineer slash architect. Sorry, I've been working as a cybersecurity engineer for over 5 years now. Um, and I will be lying if I am not swamped with work. However, this is my passion, and my thought process has always been passing knowledge and sharing that knowledge. I even till today, we still have a massive gap in the cybersecurity industry. We have a lot of gap in the cybersecurity industry, and the reason is two ways. One, the fact that a lot more organizations are adapting and are accepting the need for a cybersecurity expert. So either they hire someone new, fresh intern, and hope the person grows and catches up, or they train an internal staff and convert that person, to a cybersecurity expert. But they go out there and look for an actual skilled person, right, and hope that their budget fits. Okay. However, my challenge with all of this is, I mean, it's a massively growing industry. The pay structure isn't the same in some different organizations, but because of the constant increase in need for cybersecurity experts in all forms of organizations, it is making this our industry wanted. Like a lot of people are now within the industry and looking for these experts. Now, why am I saying all of this? The cybersecurity industry is the most unique industry there is. I have been training people on cybersecurity for over 2 years. I used to be one of the direct trainers, and I even used to work for other training companies. And one thing I see that is the same across board is once they're done with the training, the question I always get is, Kevin, what do we do with what we've learned? Right? For a software engineer, once they're done with the training, they're advised, oh, build projects, build applications, solve problems, think of anything around you, and just build an application that automates that process. Right? I mean, it's software. Just build one application. Any application you can think of, there is really no wrong application. And it helps them grow their skill, it improves them. And if they are lucky, they build a technology on a product that is of use, and either they sell it or they get people subscribed on it and make money out of it. But the point is, it's easier to answer their question when they say, what do they do with the skill they've learned? However, for us, the question is, what do we do with the skill we've learned? And we are stuck with, we really cannot do anything unless we are in an environment to secure what is existing. So we start asking questions. Oh, okay, you might need to do personalized projects, set up an infrastructure, try to enforce some principles on it, and give people some projects, and we see and try if they can get it done. But most times they really don't. Okay, but the point is, in cybersecurity industry, it's usually a challenge, right? You're done with the training. How do you use the skill? And the fastest way out is internship. I always advise people, get any internship you can see, use it, work on it for 6 to 1 year, and you can use it to actually apply for an actual job. Also write a lot of certification exams and pass it and get jobs. That's the usual use case. Now, what makes Xterns different, which is one of the reasons why I jumped on the idea when it was pitched to me, is that Xterns understands that gap where you've learned a skill and you really do not know what to do to it. So Xterns says, oh, after the skill you've learned, come on this platform, go through projects in a structured manner, just like how it would be if you were working on this implementation or this project within an organization that is paying you salary, right? And you work like you are a staff of a certain organization, doing tasks, setting up things, making researches, implementing stuff, enforcing controls, testing a lot of things based off of the structured guide and project that has been created on the Xterns platform. All right. And this gives you that day-to-day experience, operational feeling of what it would look like to do that job with the skill you have already learned. And it also gives you an idea of the gaps in terms of the skill you have that you might need to brush upon in an actual job, in a real world scenario. And that's what makes Xterns unique. And the project that I want to start with is something relating to vulnerability operations. Now, this is the thought process around that decision. Anything around cybersecurity, yeah. I mean, the core principle in cybersecurity is don't get hacked, right? And the core weakness that leads to any form of hack is a vulnerability. So a vulnerability would always lead to a hack or an exploit. So vulnerabilities are 8 times out of 10 the start of any attack. Now, what that means is any attack, even social engineering attack, it is a human vulnerability that leads to that attack. So vulnerabilities is where it starts. And vulnerabilities have very long life cycles and are ever changing and dynamic. I will give you an example. In 2021, has anybody here ever heard of the Apache server? You can just drop a comment in the comment box if you've ever heard of Apache servers before. No one? Okay, that's a surprise. Okay, so Apache servers, for anybody that understands applications, Apache servers are web servers. They are web server applications that used to basically host applications, web applications in a nutshell. Now, I mean, most people prefer using Apache. It's actually one of the most used web server application out there. Other people use Microsoft IIS, but a lot of places, a lot of people have the Apache server running in their infrastructure on their servers. Okay, thank you, Chikudi. All right. Now, in 2021, a massive vulnerability, a critical vulnerability was discovered on the Apache server. We call it the Apache log4j. I will type it in the comments. So you're all with me and you can do your research after this meeting. All right. The Apache log4j vulnerability. Now, it was a vulnerability that created or was a RCE, what RCE means is remote code execution vulnerability on the log4j feature in Apache servers. All right, log4j is a certain sub feature or functionality that helps the Apache servers run effectively within the Apache server application. All right, and that log4j gave gave rise to the remote code execution. And what remote code execution really is basically me able to run a script or a code or a command remotely on your server. So I'm on my computer, I'm connected over the network, the internet, wherever to your server, and I'm able to run a command on your server. I push a command from my computer remotely into your server, and your server executes that command. So I can use that. RCE is one of the most, is always critical, because with RCEs, if RCE are proven to be exploited, we can use it to basically take control of using machine. In fact, that's what hackers refer to as a machine has been pawned. Pawned is PWNED. I put that in the chat, so in comments as well. Now, apparently, this vulnerability was found around December of 2021, but upon further research and investigation from main top security researchers, and this is an information that people try to dim down, you wouldn't really see it out there. But apparently, it seemed that some Chinese national hackers, that the people who call APTs, Advanced Persistent Threat Actors, had already been exploiting that vulnerability on Apache web servers across the world for months, almost 3 to 6 months. They have been using that vulnerability and have been using it to exploit a lot of Apache servers without anybody knowing. So meaning it was found and made fully, a lot of us made about it in December 2021, but let's say actually it's June, some Chinese hackers were already using it to perform a lot of activities, steal information and whatnot. But they were doing it quietly, so nobody knows they are there. Now, what am I saying? Upon further research again, it was found out that the log4j vulnerability didn't come from nowhere. Apparently, there were some suspected issues around the Apache web server. Okay, this log4j seems to not have good signing, authentication, and all those extra layer of verification between network communication, right? But then those vulnerabilities were not major. They were very light or medium or low, or even information. Like, it wasn't even something people noticed, right? And there was a time where that exact log4j RCE, where they were saying the possibility of a remote code execution, it was a medium because there was no known vulnerability for that. There was no known exploit, for those vulnerabilities at the time. But what happened in a few months? Something that was a medium, a vulnerability that was a medium, became a critical because someone was able to find an exploit for that weakness. And that is why vulnerability operations are very important, because vulnerability changes. Priority of this vulnerability changes. Criticality and severity of vulnerability changes with time. And so if you don't have a system, a process, an automated workflow that helps ensure we are monitoring and managing the vulnerability status of our infrastructure, we would be in problem. And that is the reason for today's conversation. Okay, so let me drill down with the slides I currently have here, just to make it faster. All right, so let me just start by talking about, the introduction. I said earlier that vulnerabilities evolve, right? I mentioned already that vulnerabilities change from time to time, and something that is critical today might not be critical tomorrow. Sorry, something that's critical today might not be critical tomorrow, and so we do have a need to ensure we're managing the vulnerability status of our infrastructure. All right. Mm, and so that is why we are discussing about vuln ops, that is vulnerability operations. How do we manage vulnerabilities smarter and risk with a risk focused approach? That is the core of our conversation today. Now, I wanted to just jump straight into why fintech. Why is this conversation around fintech platforms? And the reason is simple. One, um, fintech comes with high risk, all right? And there is direct access to funds and personal data. If these vulnerabilities in the fintech environment are exploited, you're actually going to be able to steal people's money directly or people's personal financial information directly. It is critical. These fintech platforms are critical systems, and so they need to be taken as such. As at last year, either last year or this year, the National Security Agency of Nigeria has officially named the banking industry or financial industry of Nigeria as a critical infrastructure for the country. You know what the country's critical infrastructure mean? Meaning, what are the critical infrastructures within the country that if people attack, if it brings them down, it can actually affect the entire country's operation. Like the country can actually come to a halt. And so obviously, transportation is one of them. If we bring all transportation systems to a halt, the country would honestly stop working. Also, um, um, obviously, IT, digital infrastructure is also one of them. We've gone to a stage where we are highly dependent on digitalization. We wouldn't be able to work or do nothing. Um, and that's why NSA have alternatives for communication, security communications in their infrastructure. But recently, as I said, the banking systems, that's all banks, all financial institutions within the country, have all been, I don't want to call it certified, but have all been clearly mentioned. I think the best word is certified as a critical infrastructure of the country. Meaning, if all the banking systems go down, the country goes down. And that is true. And so that is why fintech or anything finance is very important because of the stake. It's really high stake. Um, Also, fintechs usually have complex architecture. And what we're going to be doing during the project is we're going to try and see how we can implement vulnerability of the management operation system that would be able to adjust to this dynamic, complex architecture as and when you at will. Then we have the always on expectation. As I said, it's critical infrastructure. These platforms are never to be down. That's the expectation. And so vulnerability management operations in an environment that should always be on can be a bit tricky. And so that's why it's important for us to look at it from this point of view to make it a bit more tricky for us. Heavy regulations or as well. Yes, these guys follow heavy regulations, and it would allow us the opportunity to study these regulations and understand the responsibility of these financial institutions with regards to these regulations. Because in a vulnerability management approach and in a risk management approach, we need to be able to express or show that our vulnerable system that has been built and created is not far off and will be built around the regulatory requirements. Then, one very important thing I didn't mention is lacks security from design. Sorry, give me a second, guys. Just give me a second.
Hi, Kevin. We can't hear you anymore.
Sorry about that. Sorry. Yeah. So as I was saying, I'm saying the final most important thing, uh, yeah, why we talk about fintech systems is lack of security from design. This is something I see everywhere. Most financial fintech platforms, especially the SMBs and the small ones that quickly just want to have a fintech app and want to be running, they don't think about security when they're building. In fact, what some of them do is go to a developer that has developed other fintech systems. The developer just takes that entire platform he's built before, change the logos, edit it, customize it, and sells it to them. And the point is, there is no security. Security is not considered, security is not implemented, security isn't thought of in the design of this system. So, and these guys, when they come in, they are going to be processing financial data, performing transactions. And these guys will also be working, you know, to hire people like you to secure the environment that obviously are not secure. So we need to understand how to work around such systems and come up with a plan for it. What's broken in traditional vulnerability management? The first thing is context and CVSS. Now, CVSS stands for Common Vulnerability Scoring System. Okay, and CVSS is an international body, like a research body, that gives scores to vulnerabilities and helps us give an idea to the severity of this vulnerability. So it's like, okay, this certain vulnerability, we're going to give it a 7.2 score. That makes it high. But there's another vulnerability we're going to give a 9, and that makes it a critical. It just gives us scoring to help in prioritization, really. But CVSS scores don't equate to context, meaning traditional vulnerability management use CVSS scores. So anywhere, everywhere, in all organizations, in every environment, they treat vulnerabilities the same way, even when the context matters and defines what vulnerability is critical and what isn't. Then periodic scans. Traditional vulnerability management systems usually one scan periodically, most of the time every quarter. So we've seen that that's not good enough. We need to be able to run scans dynamically. We need to run scans as at when we need, and a whole lot of other dynamic methodologies of improved sequencing. Too much noise. So what we see from traditional VMs is we get a lot of medium and high findings, sometimes low and informational findings that are not really important. So many false positives, so much noise, which we really do not need. Also, disconnected silos. We see infrastructures that have disconnected silos. Security is running from a certain environment. IT is running without the same technology, no integration. So it makes it difficult to implement vulnerability management on each of these different infrastructures or different silos. You might need to design something for each and every one of them specifically. Okay, and then finally, manual remediation. Manual remediation. So that so for manual remediation, so I was saying manual remediation is also a challenge. Sorry for this breaking transmission. So manual remediation is also a challenge. we face a lot of concerns with the remediation procedures. Now, what happens is when we have discovered the vulnerabilities, reported these vulnerabilities. Um, I don't know if you can hear me now. Chikudi, I can see your message now. Can you hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you.
All right. Sorry. So I was saying that so manual remediation is a big challenge when it comes to traditional vulnerability management procedures. Because what happens originally is once we've discovered the vulnerability, right, we report that vulnerability. Now we report that vulnerability to the application owners. Now those guys sit down and try to implement the corrections manually. It might take months. It might take a lot of time, which we don't need. So we need to be able to look for a way to bring in automation into that procedure. So that is another route we take. So yeah. So let me take my screen. Yeah. Let's now talk about the concept of vulnerability operations. Now, VulOps basically stands for vulnerability management plus operational intelligence plus automation. It's just basically a way to automate vulnerability management procedures. So this methodology helps prioritize threats based on the actual risk, not based on the score. Most vulnerability management platforms have a scoring system and say, oh, this is your vulnerability priority level based on these scores. But a VulOps system is then looking at it based on the actual risk to your environment, and the actual risk also put into consideration the assets that are vulnerable. All right, the positions of the assets, the sensitivity of the assets, sensitivity of the data seated on the assets. All of these things actually help define the actual risk, all right, of those threats. So it helps prioritize these vulnerabilities based on the actual risk these vulnerabilities really has. Then it has capacity to integrate real-time intelligence, meaning you can actually push threat intelligence from the internet, push it into our vulnerability operations automation system to give it latest vulnerability feeds. Then enables automated workflows. That is a workflow for automated remediation and patching. Um, Also ensures continuous monitoring and not just giving you reports as at when due, but it continuously monitors the environment for vulnerabilities, even when you don't run a scan. So the beauty is it's not a point in time fix, it's a continuous fix, automated process for you. So the core pillars of VulOps, um, one, disk-based prioritization, as I mentioned. Not every vulnerability is urgent. Let me give you a typical use case I have, and I always use this as an example. So I did a risk assessment in an environment here, and I found out that a certain server that is publicly hosted or publicly accessible, meaning this server can be hit through the internet, over the internet, yeah, had a medium to high vulnerability. All right. But then there was a critical vulnerability within their internal server. This their internal server was you know, was actually segmented, and it's very much segmented that only a few specific persons could actually hit that internal server, right? But on default, that vulnerability was critical. And on a good day, we would prioritize the critical vulnerability. But in that scenario, the vulnerability to be prioritized and acted on first is the vulnerability that has the access that is internet is accessible over the internet, and is a medium to high. Because what it means is they would hack or exploit that machine before they exploit another. In fact, they could use that vulnerability of that medium to high. Once they exploit it, they use it to even go and exploit the critical vulnerability within the internal network. So it's very important. Prioritization is very key. Asset contextualization, I just basically explained it with my example. It gives you context around assets, understand which systems are more important, which systems are business critical, which systems have sensitive information. Threat intelligence integration, we're able to use real world threat intel data to validate urgency and improve the vulnerability management process in general. There's also the automation and orchestration part where we are able to automatically handle and manage the whole vulnerability lifecycle. From the triaging to the analysis to the discovery of the vulnerability to the raising of tickets of this vulnerability to implementing remediation of vulnerability, closing the tickets of vulnerabilities. That is what automation can do, and it helps eliminate any form of manual delays. Then continuous monitoring, meaning we would the system, the core pillar of this VolnOps platform or system, it will help continuously monitor your environment in real time, no matter the position. So these are just a few things around the platform. Now, a few use cases. Okay, I will try to really not waste our time, but a few use cases. The first use case is let's see, maybe an API gateway vulnerability. I've seen this before. It's so coincidental that a lot of these things I have actually seen them before, and I did see that there was an API gateway that had a vulnerability, and it was an F5, and it was a known story actually at some point, and it was then it had a CVSS score of medium, but it has the asset that this API gateway is in front of is the core payment processing system. All right, the threat intel now says that it seems like there's a new exploit trending on the dark web about this medium vulnerability, that this vulnerability on the API gateway that CVSS is scoring as medium. All right, so what does that mean? Our VolnOps system will prioritize it as critical. This is what I'm talking about, and immediately put heavy attention to fix it. And the result, we apply the patch in 4 hours because we have seen it as important. And then finally, we have the mobile app debug endpoint. Now, this is also another weakness and bug of vulnerability we saw, and it is the risk score, right, is low. It was found doing continuous monitoring, meaning based on continuously monitoring and looking at vulnerabilities, we discovered this low risk vulnerability, and the exposure is just internal only. And because of that, we just monitor it and not prioritize it for now. But as it grows, as it changes, as it moves around the infrastructure, we would know and we'll keep track and we'll be able to bring us back to fix or remediate effectively. So those are some of the use cases around what a vulnerability could look like. Some key objectives on this project. Yeah, the first one is we are going to be able to demonstrate an intelligent vulnerability pipeline. We're going to build and prioritize vulnerability backlog based on CVSS and business criticality, and also trend intel fields. We'd also look at having automated workflows from Jira or having a SWA for ticket creation. We could actually use platforms like Shuttle, all right, to create such. I'm sorry, I think I would call it. I'll get the name properly later on, right? But those platforms can actually be used. Those SWA platforms can actually be used to automate this procedures. Okay. Now, the project tech stack, right? What's the core project tech stack? What are the technologies we would most likely experience? So one, we will need some level of scanning engine. It's an engine that runs all the scan in a network infrastructure, and we would most likely be using like Tenable Nexus or Rapid7 inside VM or OpenVAS. We will obviously be using anyone that is open source and doesn't require us to pay, right? But as we go ahead, we would actually look for the one that works for everybody. That's the beauty of working as a team in a pod, because everyone comes together to figure this kind of challenges out. Also, trend intelligence feeds, maybe like MISP or VirusTotal or ExploitDB. We would actually be finding a way to integrate those trend intelligence feeds and working with them. Asset inventory systems like CMDB, maybe ServiceNow CMDB, for example. We would be looking at such tools, maybe cloud discovery tools, and there is a certain system as well that we could actually use to monitor these assets as well. Then also automation tools, very important, because we would be automating a lot of the process. I mean, VolnOps is not VolnOps without automation. VolnOps is very key. Automation is very key, within the VolnOps concept. Now, finally, dashboards and reporting. The idea is we'll actually use some tech tools like Power BI or whichever one flies our way to aid the reporting and dashboarding and automated real-time information around our VolnOps system for management and anybody in the board level to understand the activities being done. One thing I can tell you for free is, I've seen this multiple times. Board heads of organizations, CEOs, don't really believe cybersecurity does a lot of work. So we need to ensure we prove our worth every time to them and show them the work being done and show them all what we need to do. All right. So yeah, I just felt to it's very important to understand how to report and package what you're doing so far. So they see that, oh, there is a lot of work being done, because the truth is the reason why a lot of organizations don't want to invest in cybersecurity. Really, they will go and meet the customer and they're like, I don't have budget for this. I have maybe a very small money just for a firewall. I don't even have budget to really implement security, and that's because of this reason. So we would also be looking for ways to report or create a dashboard to make the automated system where the board can see that anytime and understand what the vulnerable system is doing at the moment. Now, final takeaways, all right? Real world scenario. Okay, this project aims to show the actual real world situation within most fintechs. All right, we will show you by creating this our own demo dummy environment to implement these vulnerability operations. There will be collaboration. The beauty of being in a pod is you work with a lot of team members working together, trying to find a fix, handling tasks together, handling stories together, improving as a team in general. And as well, we have a structured approach. We have a structured approach. Okay, this structured approach, you know, makes it easy to know what you're doing. Makes it easy to know what you're doing in terms of what task is what task. And I'll be showing you guys very quickly what it could look like, so you see what is expected in the project as well. But so far so good. This is some of the things and key takeaways around the Phone Ops project that I wanted to show us. Do we have any questions? I don't see if there are any comments in the chat. If anyone have any questions, you can put it in the chat before I just quickly show us something around the project. Just something really small, nothing major. Anything? If you have questions, please put it in the chat. I'm waiting before I show that, and then we'll run. Okay. So I mean that I want to take that as no question. I'm really a bit worried when I don't get questions though. But yes, I would show you just a typical example. So we have about 5 different sprints, and in each sprint we have a number of issues and time weeks. So see 2 weeks on each sprint. We have 10 issues in sprint 1, and these are some of the things in the sprint. We have, for example, in week 1 we have one epic, and this is where we'll be getting the introductory information, doing research on vulnerability management, overview of ISO 10001 and the compliance requirements, looking at reviewing and getting to do's on vulnerability tools. You know, some of these things, what we are going to install. For example, you can see the task: install Nexus on a virtual machine, explore Nexus features on the dashboard. You know, get these things and you give report on some of those things that has been done. Working, doing stand-ups, reviewing what has been done. Have you implemented this to do? This is what. All right. So what you're doing, and we'll be discussing these to-dos as well in the team. So these are some of the things and the expected timeline to finish up each task. So you can see how structured it is week in, week out. And the whole idea is with this structure, by the end of our sprint in sprint 5 on week 10, all right, we would see, so this is a simple example, subtask. I have about 10 subtasks. Sorry, we have about 5 stories and 10 subtasks. These are some of the top tasks: initiate feed integration with Nexus, abstract intelligence feed, test enhanced scanning capabilities. You know, some of the other feature things we expect to see and how we're going to get it done. And at the end of it, you see that we're able to actually fully say, oh, we've implemented a vulnerability operation system. We know how to integrate with core systems, know how to implement threat intelligence feeds and whatnot. Okay. So I don't know if you have any questions. I don't know if you have any questions so far. Do we have any questions, guys? Any questions, any comments, any inputs, anything you feel you would like to see during the project that you don't see at the moment? for those that have not joined the sport.
Okay, so I'm guessing no questions. Okay, so thank you very much, Kevin. That was an interesting session, and I hope people have been able to learn one or two. Interestingly, most people might not ask questions now, but I've seen that after most of the sessions, people always come back to ask their questions, especially those who are watching the recording and all of those things. So, yeah, so I think people will be able to bring in their questions. Thank you very much for coming here to share knowledge with us, and I can't wait to see people who are going to job on the project in the next couple of weeks. So I'm just going to wrap up here. In the absence of no questions, we're going to call it a day. Thank you guys for joining in, and we're going to see you in the next one.